Digital transformation is a lot less like rolling out technology and a lot more like building a house. I'm going to explain here why today. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journeys. And one of the biggest things we learn with digital transformations is that it's a lot like building a house. And there's a lot of lessons we can learn from building a house and something as simple as building a house that we can apply to digital transformations. So what I want to do today is talk about how digital transformations, the process, the strategy, the way you execute, the way you finalize a transformation, all that stuff. I want to talk about how that's a lot more like building a house than you may think. And my hope here is that this helps explain some of the importance of some of the key work streams within digital transformation. One of the biggest dynamics we see and one of the biggest pitfalls we see organizations fall into is this sense of motivation to just jump straight into deploying technology. You've identified your needs, you've defined what it is you want out of technology, you've identified the best technology solution or solutions that are the best fit for your organization, and you simply just jump straight into designing and building and deploying technology. And that's a big problem that will lead to challenges during digital transformation. Much like a house can't be built or it can't be built effectively without a blueprint from an architect, you also need a blueprint for your implementation. So in other words, rather than just defining your high-level business requirements, picking software, and then start building stuff, you need to take the time up front to do the implementation, readiness, and the phase zero of your transformation to really take the time to define what your future state business processes are going to be, what you want your future state organization to look like, and other aspects of your digital transformation. Now, a lot of times software vendors and system integrators will suggest, don't worry about the blueprint, we'll help you do that. And they may do that to some degree. They're gonna help you define how the software should be built, but still you don't have the bigger picture vision or blueprint of how your business is gonna operate. They're looking for the blueprint for how technology should be built. And they can certainly accomplish that, but the likelihood of that being aligned with what your business needs are is very low. In fact, you're highly likely to have misalignment there. And a good way to look at this is to say, if you were building a house, you wouldn't decide that you're going to build a house and say it's a 2-story house, it's 2,000 square feet, and you're just going to start bringing in the plumber to start putting in the plumbing. You're not going to do that without a blueprint. You need that overall blueprint to show how the house is going to be built and how all the different pieces are going to fit together. So when you hire a software vendor or a system integrator to come in and just start deploying stuff, it's a lot like hiring the plumber as the first step in building a house. It's just something you don't do. And if you do that, it's going to be on a shaky foundation, and chances are pretty high that you're not going to have a stable foundation or a stable house to work from. So one of the most important things you can do, or one of the most important lessons you can learn from building a house, is the need to have the architecture and the blueprint for what your business is going to look like in the future so that your digital transformation can support that and fall within the realm of what you're trying to accomplish. So while the blueprint gives you the vision of what the end state is going to look like and what the overall house or the digital transformation is going to look like, you also need a solid foundation. You don't start putting in the framing and the flooring and the plumbing and the electrical until you've got the foundation built. In fact, it's one of the first things you do when you build a house. And the same is true for digital transformation. You need to make sure you've got the solid foundation before you start building technology and building other aspects of your transformation on top of it. So some examples of what those foundational activities are would be, first of all, project governance. What is the overall project governance for how you're going to manage the vendors, the system integrators, the consultants, all that good stuff? You need to have a clear set of processes, roles and responsibilities, and that overall vision for how the project will be managed. That's a core foundational part of your transformation. You also have organizational change management. Without effectively impacting the human side of change, the project is not going to succeed. And so you need to have a clear organizational change strategy and a clear organizational change plan before you start even thinking about deploying technology. So taking that time to define that organizational change strategy and plan is critical, and it's a key foundational aspect of your transformation. And then finally, another example is your overall technical architecture. You might be deploying a single ERP system, or you might be deploying human capital management or CRM or supply chain management technology. Whatever software it is, chances are you're doing that in the context of other systems. You have the need to integrate to other systems. You have the need to bring data over from your legacy systems and whatnot. And so that vision for what the overall technical architecture will look like, how you're going to migrate data, how you're going to integrate systems, all that stuff is another foundational aspect of your digital transformation. So before you get too far into your transformation, you want to make sure you have these key foundational aspects completed, or that foundation laid, to use the analogy of house building, before you get too far into your project. When you're building a house, or in most cases when you build a house, you have a general contractor. That general contractor hires the electricians, the drywall people, the people that do the flooring, plumbing, all that stuff, the roofing. And that's a lot like how digital transformation is. You need a general contractor that can manage all the different moving parts and different parties that are involved in transformation. Now, the problem with our industry is that software vendors and system integrators often sell themselves as that general contractor, or they might argue that you don't need that general contractor because they're the ones providing the technology. But again, it's like a plumber coming in and saying, I can be your general contractor. Most people intuitively understand that the plumber is not the general contractor. That's something very different. The plumber is one of many subcontractors that need to be managed throughout the process, and therefore you need a general contractor. So again, even if you're deploying one single type of technology, that software vendor that provides the nuts and bolts of how the software is going to work is one subcontractor. But you also have to address change management. You've got to address architecture, data migration and integration, and of course the overall program management that ties it all together. So that's why providing that program management, the high-level view, and that high-level management of all the different moving parts is so important, just like the general contractor is so important to building a house. When you're building a house, usually you have very clearly defined roles. The plumber does the plumbing, the electrician does the electrical, the flooring guy or gal does the flooring, the roofer does the roofing, and it's very clearly defined, and it makes sense because you can see it, you can touch it, you can feel it, you can tie it back to the blueprint or the architectural work that was done early on. But the problem with digital transformation is a lot of times people don't fully understand all those different subcontractors that need to be involved. Now, of course, when I talk about subcontractors here and using this analogy, it doesn't necessarily mean that all the resources I'm talking about on a digital transformation necessarily need to be subcontractors. Some of them could be internal resources. Some of them could be outside consulting firms. Some of them will come from your software vendor, your system integrator. So multiple parties could provide resources to help you with this. But the key here is to understand what all those pieces are. And so in the same way that a plumber isn't going to come in and give you an estimate of how long it's going to take to build a house, nor are they going to be able to give you an accurate cost estimate of how much it'll cost you to build the house, neither can a software vendor or system integrator tell you how much time or money it's going to take to go through your digital transformation. And the reason for that is because they're just one subcontractor within the bigger picture. You need the other subcontractors to provide inputs into the process, and then the general contractor, as we just talked about before, is the one that kind of pulls this all together and looks at the overall time frame, the overall budget, ties it all together, make sure you have an overarching plan, and that's the role that the general contractor plays relative to the subcontractors. So when you're looking at planning for your project, you're setting your budget, you're defining roles, you just want to make sure you have all those different subcontractor roles defined as it relates to your digital transformation. Now, in most parts of the world, when you build a house or any sort of building, there's extensive government regulations on what qualifies as a finished product that's actually going to pass the regulatory compliance needs of that local entity. The problem with digital transformations, on the other hand, is there's very little, if any, regulation or oversight of how those projects are managed. So when you think about a house, if you have a shaky foundation, or there's certain criteria that aren't met for safety purposes, or to accomplish whatever the goal of the house is, which is to provide shelter and to provide safety, then it's not going to pass code and it's not going to get approved, and the house won't ever finish or be sold. Going back to digital transformation, though, none of that compliance or verification exists in the marketplace. So you can't rely on the government to tell you how your digital transformation should work. So the question becomes, how do you validate that you're implementing the way it should be implemented, that you're mitigating risk, that you're avoiding the cost overruns, the time overruns, and all that stuff? And so we have to think creatively about how can we institute a similar sort of result as you would find in house building without necessarily getting the government involved. So how can you as an organization, in other words, provide the oversight and the verification compliance of how the digital transformation is going? And this is a role that companies like Third Stage can provide. That's a common service we provide to our clients. is using our quality assurance and implementation program management framework to help provide that sort of compliance and that sort of validation that the project is going to succeed and that you're adequately addressing the risks or the safety issues, if you will, of that digital transformation. So when you're defining your overall transformation, you want to make sure you've got those quality checkpoints in place and those overall validation and verification of the result that you're getting from your transformation. So I hope this has provided you some general guidance of how to think about your digital transformation differently in a way that most of us can relate to, especially in the context of something like a house, which again, you can see it, you could touch it, you could feel it. And that's the way we have to think about digital transformation, is how can we treat our digital transformation more like building a house? And if we do that, we're more likely to be successful. So for more information on other best practices and lessons learned from digital transformations throughout the world, I encourage you to download our Digital Transformation Report, which is an annual report we publish each year. And that focuses on general best practices, independent rankings and reviews of different software vendors and providers. And I've included a link to that below, so be sure to check that out. I've also included links to a number of other white papers and videos and resources that are meant to help you through your digital transformation. So I encourage you to check that out as well. So I hope you found this information useful. Hope you have a great day.